action?
This is a demonstration of a bolus feeding by a nasogastric tube. We would have done the standard steps for the steps that would be. For the purposes of this video, we want to keep it short, but in your CBE, you will be doing the standard steps. My client that I will be helping is Miss Florence Nightingale. She is non-responsive, so she will not be talking, but it would be important for me to explain to her what I'm doing while I am giving her this bolus feeding. So I will begin by putting on my gloves, and the first thing that I want to do is check placement of the tube, because they do migrate, they do get into spaces where we do not want them, and so anytime we do anything with the nasogastric tube, or with the PEG tube, or with the PJ tube, the tube that goes into the jejunum, we always want to validate placement. So I will come to her left upper quadrant, and again I have to expose the entire abdomen in order to see that I am in the right place. And I will, with my stethoscope, I am going to auscultate and aspirate. I'm going to use 10 mils of air. And I will listen, push rapidly so that I can hear it, and I hear a swish. If I'm not able to hear a swish, I will reposition my patient, have them move around a little bit, and check again. Generally that does it for us. After I have auscultated and listened, I will now aspirate. And as I aspirate, I'm going to protect the bedding, because if I have tube feeding or gastric secretions that go on the bedding, I will either be responsible for changing all of that, or I will need to ask my STNA, and it's not necessary. It happens, but it's not necessary. So either a Chuck's pad or a towel is good. Now I'm going to aspirate, and I'm going to aspirate, and this time, because this person has been, Miss Nightingale has been getting tube feedings, I will aspirate all of the stomach contents, and we call this residual. So I am aspirating, and I get 50 mils. On your CBE, it says to refeed this by gravity flow, but in reality and for your CBE, you can refeed this slowly. It really makes more sense to do it this way. Now, I'm going to demonstrate a different situation now. If I aspirate, and I'm aspirating and aspirating, and I'm seeing tube feeding, and I'm mixed in with gastric secretions, and I get 60 mils, and I know there's still more in there, I will clamp this tube, and I'm going to put this secretion, I want to save it because I'm going to eventually give it back, and I'm going to go back in again now and see if there's more residual. And when I do this, I get 50. When I get to a little over 50, there's no more in there. So I'm going to clamp the tube, and I am going to save that because I'm going to give it back to Miss Nightingale. But I now have 110 mils of residual. Our guideline is 100 mils. Generally, if we get 100 mils or more residual, we hold the feeding. And it doesn't make sense that we would just keep putting more feeding in if this patient's not digesting it. A couple things could happen. We'll come back in, and you may have a policy for your agency, 1 hour or 2 hours. You'll come back and check it again. If at that point in time there is there's less than 100 mils, you can go ahead and do your feeding. want to watch the pattern, because that will need, if that happens frequently, we'll need to adjust and work with the dietitian, ultimately get a physician's order to either decrease the amount of the feeding or to increase the time between feedings. So I have aspirated and I have auscultated, and in this case, I would, because I had a high residual, I would just connect this, keep it connected until I get some fluid in, and I would re-pour the residual until it's all in, and then I would follow that with some water to clear the tube. Now, I want to say one other thing to you here. I'm going to keep this clamped. The best way to check placement of a nasogastric tube is by pH. So if you have the ability to check pH, that's the best way to check placement of the nasogastric tube. That can be done either by taking some secretions out and checking them with a dip stick, or there's little monitors that we can put right on the end of the nasogastric tube that will check the pH. We do not always have those available. In some facilities, you will be either auscultating or aspirating. We teach you both auscultation and aspiration, but don't think that a facility is wrong if they're just doing one of those. So now I have again lost my clamp. Does anyone see where it might be this time? There we go. So I'm going to clamp this while I check my feeding. I'm going to keep this pigtail up above the level of the stomach. So my formula, I want to check the expiration date of my formula, and I want to be sure this is the correct formula. And in our extended care facilities, frequently this is kept in the closet of the patient, and a person who is in charge of supplies has put this formula there. So they're not checking to be sure that it is the right formula. Good chance that it will be, but you always want to check this yourself to be sure if you have the right formula. And if there's an HP, like high protein, after the formula, it's going to be different. Like Infamil HP is different than Infamil. So it's just like checking your drugs. You want to be sure you've got the right. So I have this, and I'm ready now to do the feeding. So I will clamp my tube, and I'm going to feed through this. The first thing I want to do is to clear the tube of whatever is already in there. And I also, that gives us a chance to be sure that this tube is flowing properly before we get our feeding in there. So I'm going to pour in some water. 30 mils is probably enough. But remember, I have a flush I'm working with. You've not yet had that in class, but I have a certain amount of water that I'm going to be giving this patient to. But right now I want to be sure I clear the tube. And then clear the tube, I have to unclamp it. I'm going to pour formula into probably no more than halfway. Remember, I put air down here at one point, so if I am clearing this and I'm looking down to see, chances are that it's going to bubble right up in my eyes. I've got glasses on, so that's a good protection. I will let this go down until it's almost all in, clamp, and re-pour. Another half. I'll let this go down, and if I'm watching it, when it gets down closer here, I don't have to go through the clamping. I can just keep pouring the formula in till I have given the amount that was ordered. Then I will clamp it, or I will have my water all ready, and I'm going to pour some water in, let it clear, pour some water in, let it get low again, because I'm diluting that formula until I leave this tube clear of formula. Then I will take this off, and oh, that clamp is so elusive. And then I'm going to reclamp and keep this higher than the level of the stomach, up 30-degree angle, make Miss Florence Nightingale comfortable. comfortable, do my standard steps. I have a biohazard bag to put anything that I need to in the biohazard bag. I will clean my stethoscope and take my gloves off, sanitize my hands, and document.